Justin, President Trump, I'm going to read this for you in a second, with a harsh response to the man he fired at the State Department, Rex Tillerson. Take a look at this Trump tweet. Justin, Mike Pompeo is doing a great job. I am very proud of him. His predecessor, Rex Tillerson, didn't have the mental capacity needed. He was dumb as a rock, and I couldn't get rid of him fast enough. He was lazy as hell. Now it is a whole new ballgame. Great spirit at state! Exclamation mark. Yeah. So, what sparked this? I want you to listen to this Rex Tillerson interview. And keep in mind, Tillerson is known to be tight-lipped. He's really hunkered down since he left state in March, very safe with his word choice. He has not spoken out at all since leaving.
We did not have a common value system. When the president would say, well, here's what I want to do, and here's how I want to do it. And I'd have to say to him, well, Mr. President, I understand what you want to do, but you can't do it that way. It violates the law. It violates a treaty. You know, he got really frustrated, and I think he grew tired of me being the guy every day that told him you can't do that. He acts on his instincts. In some respects, that looks like impulsiveness, but it's not his intent to act on impulse. I think he really is trying to act on his instincts. It was challenging for me, coming from the disciplined, highly process-oriented ExxonMobil Corporation, to go to work for a man who is pretty undisciplined, doesn't like to read, doesn't read briefing reports, doesn't like to get into the details of a lot of things, but rather just kind of says, look, this is what I believe.
I've got David Axelrod with me, host of the Axe Files, former senior advisor for the Obama White House. David Axelrod, wow.
Yeah, wow. You know, well, first of all, you can understand why the president would be irritated to have a former member of his cabinet speaking out in that way. So in certain ways, you could anticipate this. On the other hand, you know, you got to wonder why people accept these jobs, you know, knowing that if things go south, and they almost always do, it seems, that, you know, you are at some time or another going to be on the other end of one of these blasts. So, but the things that Tillerson said, though not surprising, are, you know, continue a disturbing portrait of the way the president does his job. And that's probably what we should focus on.
Well, let me ask you about that, because, you know, again, this is a man, Tillerson, who hasn't spoken up and out since he left his post at State in March. You know, what do you make of why he is speaking up now, how he's speaking up now? What's in it for him?
Just to set the record straight, I'm sure. He was kind of unceremoniously replaced. And there were questions about how he ran the State Department. And there are differences between running a corporation and being America's chief diplomat and running the State Department. But, you know, there's no doubt that the president grew weary of him, and he grew weary of the president. The quotes that we saw from him about the president while he was Secretary of State, though he never entirely embraced them, made it clear that he didn't have a high regard for the president. The president, remember, tweeted that he shouldn't be wasting his time talking to the North Koreans, kind of ironic in retrospect. But theirs was a checkered relationship from the start, and I think Tillerson has chosen, this Q&A format to get some of his side of the story out.
In Texas, in a group of potential wealthy Republican donors, you know, is where he's saying what he's saying. When you listen to the substance of what he's saying, you know, he wasn't specific, but he definitely shed light on Trump's leadership style. And you know, we've heard bits and pieces of this from sources on how Trump behaves or reacts, or maybe thinks he's above the law. Trump often getting frustrated when told his ideas would break the law. But this is the first time we've heard, on the record from a cabinet level official, David.
Yeah, absolutely. It completely confirms all the reporting that's been done for 2 years, and you hear a lot of unsourced quotes from people in the administration that support this. We saw a whole essay on this that remains anonymous at its source. So he's confirming what a lot of people have written and said, but it is jarring coming from him. As far as the setting, those are his people. I mean, when you say wealthy Republican donors in Texas, well, that's his community. So he probably felt that was a good place to unburden himself.
But when you hear him say the president just doesn't like to read, doesn't like to read briefing reports. You as a former presidential advisor, imagine working with a commander-in-chief who's not reading your briefing reports, David. Mm-hmm. Is that not worrisome?
No, it's worrisome. It's been worrisome. We've heard that they've prepared briefings with photographs and illustrations because it holds his attention more. When I worked for President Obama, who used to go home with a thick sheaf of briefing papers under his arm. And when we would meet the next day, it was very clear that he had read his brief, he had thought about his brief, and he had a lot of good questions based on what he had read, and it gave you confidence as someone who worked for the president that he was on top of things, that he was going to make thoughtful decisions, informed decisions. That's what people should want from a president, but that's not what got Donald Trump to the White House. What Tillerson said about following his instincts, he believes his instincts are infallible. They led him to where he is today. All of the experts said do it a different way. He ignored them, and he believes in following his instincts. The problem is the rest of the country is attached to the decisions that he makes.
Let's talk about this weekend. Ahead on the Axe Files, you've got Rahm Emanuel. Let me just set this clip up. So this is you and Rahm Emanuel talking about, of course, we know you've got an incoming Democratic majority on the House side come next year. And so this was his advice to these Democrats. Play the clip.
Yeah.
Don't focus immediately on Trump. Focus immediately. You have something with the Secretary of Labor. You have with EPA. You have Interior Department. You have it at the Commerce Department. You have it at HUD. He has brought the swamp to Washington and flooded the plains. And I think Mueller will deal with Trump.
And he's begun to turn over his cards.
That's right. You don't have to go and lead Mueller. You need Mueller to lead. You have an entire government that is not on its game protecting the American people. The House should focus there.
So it sounds like he's saying, to the Dems, focus on governing and let Mueller handle the big investigation.
There's no question about it. And it's meaningful coming from Rahm Emanuel because he was the number 4 Democrat in the House before he became White House Chief of Staff under President Obama. And he was known as a shrewd legislative, political strategist and tactician. And his advice is don't jump into the deep end of the pool here by trying to plow the same ground that Mueller is plowing. Focus on individual agencies and issues that are important to people in their lives, and the rest will take care of itself. I think it's pretty sound advice.
We'll tune in tomorrow on the Axe Files. David, thank you so much with Rahm Emanuel.
Thanks,
tomorrow night, 7 o'clock right here on CNN. Stay with me. We are waiting for what could be a major breaking news drop, really. These 2 files in the investigation into this possible Russian collusion, a pair of court filing deadlines hitting today involving both Paul Manafort and Michael Cohen. So stand by for that.